Well, welcome, folks. I just want to lead this show with a little salute to our program In Our Hands, which is the CBN motion picture. Had an opening last night, sold out theaters all across the country, at least 100,000 people. Fathom is going to give another night. We'll be announcing that. The opening will be in Israel in a few days, but it's just a tremendous program, and the response of the audience is overwhelming. So we'll tell you in detail, but I just wanted to congratulate our film crew and the people who were involved in producing it, my son Gordon and Aaron Zimmerman, who was the writer of much of it. It's a great show. Well, police in Manchester, England, have arrested 3 more suspects, as people thought it couldn't have possibly been one lone bomber. Well, that was the terrifying, horrifying terrorist attack that killed at least 22 people, most of them young people, including one 8-year-old girl.
So heartbreaking. And the British government has called in the military to help out as it works to prevent another potential terrorist strike. Dale Hurd has the story.
The terror threat level in Britain has been raised to critical as Prime Minister Theresa May warned that another attack may be imminent. The new arrest today could confirm the suspicion by authorities that 22-year-old Salman Abedi did not act alone. Abedi detonated a device at the end of a concert by American singer Ariana Grande. Bethany Keeling was near the exit when the bomb went off.
Saw like flash, like an explosion flash. I grabbed my friend's hand and just ran. But we looked and we could see the bodies on the floor.
Abedi was born in Britain to immigrants from Libya. He grew up in Manchester and even attended a British university. Police blew the door off his Manchester home just miles from the concert arena looking for evidence, including his phone and computer. The youngest victim, Safi Rousseau, is just 8 years old. Another victim, 15-year-old Olivia Campbell. Before learning of her death, Olivia's uncle stood at the hospital doors showing everyone her picture and hoping to find her. The number hospitalized with wounds has climbed to 64.
Of those, approximately 20 are receiving critical care. That means very urgent care at the present time.
And some are still missing, like Martin Hett, separated from his friends at the end of the show. And this mother, Wendy Fowle, who hasn't been seen since the concert. Reactions to the attack have ranged from defiance to calls for unity, with some even suggesting that Britain should just get used to being attacked. Israel's defense minister Avigdor Lieberman weighed in, saying terrorism is unlikely to stop in Europe because of its politically correct character, and that every bombing in Europe leads to a lot of talk but little action. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, here at home, the president has presented a budget which is the largest budget that has ever been proposed for any nation in the history of the world. Got that? The largest budget that has ever been proposed in the history of the world, in excess of $4 trillion. The largest, I want to say again, it is a huge. Now, listen, this budget grows. It is not a cut, it grows. But all they've done is cut back the rate of growth to try to get something as sustainable. And while they're doing it, I have been simply appalled at the over-the-top statements of leading Democrats. Here is what has been said by the minority leader of the United States Senate. Well, first of all, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker, the minority leader in the House, quote, literally a killer for the American people, $4.3 trillion. And Schumer called it a comic book villain, I can't say it.
Villain bad budget.
Can you imagine that? $4.3 trillion, and they say it's killer. It's like throwing grandmother over the cliff. I mean, it is insane that those people would say that. They have lost touch with economic reality, and as what the budget director was saying, look, it's time to stop worrying always about who's getting the recipient of the money and start worrying a little compassion about the people who have to pay the bills. Okay, well, we'll have more about that as the day goes on. Well, after visiting Saudi Arabia and Israel, President Trump went on to the Vatican, where he met with the Pope. Our David Brody is traveling with President Trump, And he brings us this story from that historic meeting.
This world religion trip has had it all. Kings in the Islamic world, a prime minister in Israel, and then the Pope. It's been a religious whirlwind for a president trying in his bid to root out terrorism by rallying the three major religions in a bid for peace. The Pope's gift to President Trump was in that vein, a sculpted olive tree symbolizing peace. The Pope also gave the president a few books to read, including The Joy of the Gospel, which talks about having a personal relationship with Jesus, along with fighting for social justice around the world. CBN News has had an up-close view of the events unfolding on the president's trip. We were part of a select group of the media who came to the Vatican to witness a bit of history. Senior administration officials tell CBN News that the World Religion Tour was done intentionally to come to places like this, the Vatican, we are in the courtyard, and basically reset that relationship with the Pope, which at times had been a bit testy. The Trump-Pope spat goes back to the presidential race when the pontiff took issue with Trump's insistence to build that big, beautiful border wall. He said someone who thinks about building walls and not building bridges is not a Christian. Trump fired back.
A religious leader to question a person's faith is disgraceful. I'm proud to be a Christian.
A person who says no walls but bridges, and the other who says walls, not bridges, is something which you cannot reconcile.
Nina Shea with the Hudson Institute tells CBN News coming here to the Vatican is an opportunity to mend fences.
Certainly, the Pope is leader of a church that has millions of followers. It's important that he make peace with Pope Francis and vice versa.
Besides immigration, there are other stark contrasts between both leaders. They don't see eye to eye on climate change. The president hinting at pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. And the issue of Syrian refugees is another minefield. But they do agree on other crucial issues, like stopping religious persecution. Another topic at the Vatican meeting, fighting human trafficking, something Trump's daughter Ivanka is pushing hard for while here in Rome. Plenty of important issues in a world that sometimes seems to get more volatile and darker by the day. The president believes the three major religions can have a big say in the outcome.
Well, David is with us now from Rome. Has the Trump team been happy with their meeting with the Pope?
Yes, absolutely, Pat. Not only have they been happy with the meeting with the Pope here in Rome today or this morning, they've been ecstatic about this trip. And quite frankly, the reviews are wunderbar. I mean, well, we're not in Germany, but, you know, they've been great. And this is exactly the tonic that President Trump needed to get out of Washington. Maybe he should spend some more time over here in Europe because the reviews have been great. Everywhere from Saudi Arabia to Israel and even into Rome, everything has been going swimmingly for this White House. But look, I mean, there's a reason for that. They have been planning this since the early transition days. It's been about 6 months or so, and Jared Kushner is really behind a lot of this. In essence, he's the Mideast peace guy. He's the guy that's been dealing with the Saudi family, and he's the one to watch for as we move forward here, Pat.
Well, how about the Pope? You know, there have been a number of points of disagreement between Trump and the Pope. Have they been settled, or did they talk about any of these contentious issues?
Well, what we understand is that when the actual meeting took place, the audience, if you will, between the Pope and the President, those were the only two in the room. And so now we start to hear the trickle as to what exactly happened inside the room. We do understand that religious persecution came up, but they see eye to eye on that. That's not really the issue. Obviously, the issues are climate change and immigration, as we discussed in the piece. And we understand that those did come up as well. But the details, you know, the devil's in the details, not quite there yet. I can say this, though, that the president wanted to make sure that he came to Rome and understand that he needs this Pope. He needs this Pope to, in essence, be more credible on the international stage. And I think that's very important for this White House, at least the way they see it, Pat.
You know, it's a little ironic that the Pope was criticizing the idea of building a wall. He lives in an area that is surrounded by a wall. Right. The Vatican has a wall with Swiss guards.
Well, you know, and that's one of the things that I know he's been there. Look, there's been a lot of criticism thrown at this Pope, especially from the social justice aspect of it all. But I have to tell you that we've heard a little. I'm not going to say that we've heard social justice out of President Trump, because that's a very toxic phrase. But we have heard more of that, how do I say it, kumbaya spirit on this overseas trip. I mean, there's no doubt that President Trump, kind of like the alien that comes to Earth and says, "I come in peace." That has been his mantra for this whole time in every place that he's been. And so far, it's worked very well. Now, whether or not it can work, especially in the Middle East, that remains to be seen. But they're very pleased, Pat.
Well, do you think the Trump team understands the deep divisions that take place in Israel between the Israelis and the Palestinians?
They understand them, but look, well, let's unpack this a little bit. Some folks in the administration understand it, and then there's other folks that understand it even further. So there's the paragraph deep folks, and then there's the folks that really understand it. And there's a kind of a conflict between the two. Not a conflict, but there's a discussion between both sides as to exactly how to do this. And that's why he went to Saudi Arabia first, because he knows he needs to get the Saudis on board here. And the Trump administration believes that Iran is the key to all of this, that a common enemy will help the Sunnis and the Israelis not necessarily start to hold hands and say we are the world, so to speak, but do enough to, in essence, fight this scourge that is called terrorism. You know, it does feel a little bit of pie in the sky here. But, you know, Donald Trump, right, he's the wheeler and dealer. And I think if you combine Donald Trump's DNA that is really relational and all about deal making, if you combine that with a big personality, he's got a great relationship with Bibi, so Bibi trusts him, that Benjamin Netanyahu. Abbas seems to be willing to at least do something. The proof's in the pudding on that one for sure. And the Saudis, I got to tell you, Pat, we were in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The Saudis love Trump. Why do they love him? I mean, I think it's a no-brainer here. They see him as powerful. They see him as, he has gold-plated living rooms. Oh, he's their type of guy for sure.
Well, last question. I talked to Michael Oren. He thinks that if we move the embassy, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it'd be met with a big yawn. There's not going to be some devastating change, and we'll be subject to attacks all around the world. Is any possibility Trump is going to be, going back to his original promise to move the embassy to Jerusalem?
It is a card that he wants to potentially play, but he doesn't want to play it right now. And I think that's the key. You know, for him, as we've talked about, it's the art of the deal. So he says, so in the mind of the White House, it's like, look, Palestinians, come to the table, or if you're not going to come to the table and negotiate in good faith, well, guess what? I may not sign a waiver. And if I don't sign a waiver in 6 months, that means the embassy is going to Jerusalem. And I understand it's going to take a while to get the embassy to Jerusalem, but he has that card to play. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that that promise will be fulfilled. I mean, it will be fulfilled at some point if he chooses to do so. He still has it out there. So a lot of people are saying it's a broken campaign promise. Well, hold on for a moment. Let's see how this process plays out. And I think we can decide that more in about 3 years or so.
All right, David, look forward to more of your reports as you travel on with the president. Thank you very much. David Brody, our peripatetic correspondent,
it is
on the road again. All right.